Hello friends and welcome to E-Pathshala. I am Prerna Trehan, Assistant Professor at GGDSD College, Punjab University. In today's module, we shall be looking at Raja Ram Mohan Roy, one of the leaders of Indian political thought. We shall look at his political thought, move on to his views on the emancipation of women, political and modern education. We will then be looking at his ideas on individual freedom and the reasons why he supported British political rule in the country. Raja Ram Mohan Roy was born on 22nd May 1772 in an Orthodox Brahmin family at Radhanagar in Bengal. His father, Ram Kant Roy, was a revenue official and a dependent landholder under Maharani of Bardwan. Ram Mohan Roy's early education included the study of Persian and Arabic at Patna, where he had to read the Quran, the works of some mystic poets of Persia, and Arabic translations of the work of Plato and Aristotle. Then he went to Benares to study Sanskrit and read the ancient Hindu scriptures, especially the Vedas and the Upanishads. Returning to his village at the age of 16, he wrote a rational critique of Hindu idol worship, which invited criticism from all quarters. Raja Ram Mohan Roy had to leave his home. From there on, he went on to different places, including Tibet, where he secured a first-hand knowledge of Buddhism, and then to Benares, where he undertook further studies of Sanskrit texts of Advaita Vedanta school. From 1835 to 1840, he worked for the East India Company as personal diwan of Woodford and then of Digby. The association with English civil servants, especially Digby, was instrumental in Roy's criticism of modern Western thought. In November 1830, he sailed for England to be present there to contract the possible nullification of the act banning sati. Powerful propaganda had been mounted by the Orthodox Brahmins against the banning of sati in 1829 by William Bentinck. Again, Raja Ram Mohan Roy was given the title of Raja, by the titular Mughal Emperor of Delhi, whose grievances the former was to present before the British king. Raja Ram Mohan Roy inaugurated the age of enlightenment and liberal reformists, and to achieve all of this he relied on his wide knowledge of Perse-Arabic, classical Greek, Vedanta and modern Western thought. This has been acknowledged by many others, amongst Jeremy Bentham, C.F. Andrews, Bajendranath Seal and Rabindranath Tagore, that his concerns as a reformer and thinker were not confined to India. Furthermore, Andrews calls him the pioneer of whole world movement, while Bentham, before he met Raja Ram Mohan Roy during the latter's visit to England, addressed him in a letter as intensely admired and dearly beloved collaborator in the service of mankind. Tagore has assessed Raja Ram Mohan's work in the following work. There was a day when all alone Raja Ram Mohan Roy took his stand on the common claim of humanity and tried to unite India with the rest of the world. He taught us that truth belongs to all men and that we Indians belong to the whole world. Raja Ram Mohan Roy extended India's consciousness in time and space. Several of degenerate features of the Bengal society were singled out scornfully in Raja Ram Mohan Roy's first work, Tehful-ul-Morawaddin, a gift to the monotheist, published in 1803-04 at Murshidabad, where he was living at the time. It was written in Persian with a preface in Arabic. In it, he exposed such irrational religious beliefs and corrupt practices of Hindu, like belief in revelations, prophets, miracles, the seeking of salvation bathing in a river, worshipping of tree, or becoming a monk and purchasing forgiveness for their crime from high priests, and the hundreds of useless hardships and privations regarding eating and drinking, purity and impurity, auspiciousness and inauspiciousness. In the introduction to his Bengali translation of Sama Upanishad, he pointed out the need to correct those exceptionable practices which not only deprive Hindus in general of the common comforts of society, but also lead them frequently to self-destruction. Raja Ram Mohan Roy identified himself with the victims of religious orthodoxies, which he wrote in Tohfat have become the cause of injury and detrimental to social life and sources of trouble and bewilderment to the people, instead of tending to ameliorate the condition of the society. From his diagnosis, Raja Ram Mohan Roy concluded that religious reform is both social and political modernization. he conceived of reformist religious associations as instruments of social and political transformation. Accordingly, he founded the Amitya Sabha in 1815, the Calcutta Unitarian Association in 1821, and the Brahmo Samaj in 1828. Raja Ram Mohan Roy came to the conclusion that for the emancipation of the people, the monopoly of orthodox Brahmins over the sacred texts had to be undermined. In other words, their exclusive rights to read and interpret the books of knowledge had to be challenged. In order to vindicate my own faith and that of our forefathers, he wrote, I have been endeavoring to convince my countrymen to find the true meaning of our sacred books. From his comparative analysis of different religions, Raja Ram Mohan Roy concluded that there are three basic tenets in all religions. First, belief in one universal supreme being. Second, the belief in the existence of the soul. And third, belief in life after death. Raja Ram Mohan Roy accepts that these beliefs are on the basis of reason and or social utility. Other than these basic tenets, he finds many false and objectionable dogmas and doctrines in Hinduism as well as in other religions. These, he says, must be rejected, for which he offers the following justification. If mankind are brought into existence and by nature formed to enjoy the comforts of society and the pleasure of an improved mind, they may be justified in opposing any system, religious, domestic or political, which is inimical to the happiness of the society or calculated to debase the human intellect. Emancipation of Women. Raja Ram Mohan Roy is well known for his pioneering thought and action on the emancipation of women, especially on the abolition of sati or widow burning. He then used the words of Dr. David Kopf, found Bengali Hindu women uneducated, illiterate, deprived of property rights, married before puberty, imprisoned in parda, and murdered at widowhood by a barbaric custom of immolation known as sati. Unless women were freed from such inhuman forms of oppression, Raja Ram Mohan Roy felt that the Hindu society could not progress. He characterized sati as the violation of every humane and social feeling and symptomatic of moral debasement of a race. Just as he opposed the orthodox Christian doctrine of atonement, he also rejected the theory that the wife can or has to atone for the sins of her husband. Raja Ram Mohan Roy also advocated widow remarriage, female education, and the right to women to property. Caste system. Raja Ram Mohan Roy's attitude towards the caste system was somewhat ambivalent. While he practiced some of the overcaste rules, such as wearing of the sacred thread, he noted that God makes no distinction of caste and that a division into castes has been the source of want of unity amongst us. Pioneer of modern Western education. Raja Ram Mohan Roy was a pioneer of Western education which he believed would enlighten the Indians against superstitions and injustices of religious orthodoxies. The mere study of ancient Sanskrit texts, he said, would only keep the country in darkness. In his famous letter on education to Lord Amherst, he wrote, and I quote, "If it had been intended to keep the British nation in ignorance of real knowledge, the Baconian philosophy would not have been allowed to displace the system of modern men, which was the best calculated to perpetuate ignorance. In the same manner, the Sanskrit system of education would be best calculated to keep this country in darkness if such had been the policy of British legislature. But the improvement of the native population is the object of the government, and it will consequently promote a more liberal and enlightened system of instruction embracing mathematics, natural philosophy, chemistry, anatomy, and other useful sciences." In 1816, Ram Mohan Roy founded an English school, and some years later he lent support to the founding of the Hindu College. In 1825, he started the Vedant College, in which the study of Western knowledge was combined with Indian learning. His political thoughts. In Raja Ram Mohan Roy's economic and political thought, there are some certainties between liberal capitalist and feudal aristocratic values, as well as between colonial and post-colonial orientations. The socio-historical changes that Raja Ram Mohan Roy was responding to did not permit any neat and simple theoretical and philosophical treatment or pragmatic encapsulation. In the face of the unprecedented socio-historical changes that were unfolding before him, he, in his writings, advocated the cause of what he felt were liberating and growth-promoting forces and opposed what seemed to him oppressive and growth-inhibiting features of the emerging political economy. Initially, he himself acknowledged that he had a great aversion to British rule, but subsequently he became its admirer and responsible critic. The basic ingredients of Ram Mohan Roy's thought seem to have been from anti-medievalist composition of his general philosophy of life. He derived a system of social ethics in which individualistic ethics were tempered by principle of communitarian ethics. In economics and politics, while he recognized the autonomy of the sphere of both, he also emphasized the role of religion as a rational regulative principle for both economics and politics and an instrument for creating an ideal state. Social authority with individual freedom. Ram Mohan Roy's thought can be understood correctly as a great synthesizer. In the field of social ethics, he tried to harmonize social authority with individual freedom. According to him, individual progress is the criteria of social progress. But individual progress is impossible unless the conditions of social progress are created and sustained by social action. Like Locke, Grotius, and Thomas Paine, he believed in the immutable sanctity of natural rights. Further, he understood these rights in the modern world. Nevertheless, his ethical sheer anchor was the Benthamite principle of the greatest happiness of the greatest number. Moreover, he understood that natural rights did not imply any possibility of the violation of equal rights of others. Reasons for support of British rule. Broadly speaking, there are two main reasons for Raja Ram Mohan Roy's favourable attitude towards British rule in India. Firstly, he persuaded that British rule, unlike the despotic and tyrannical rule of Mughals or Rajputs, provided security and civil liberties to the Indian people. Next, he felt that the introduction of capitalist norms and principles by British were contributing to India's economic development. In his political thinking, he admired the British system of constitutional government for the civil liberties it gave to the people. He wanted to extend the benefits of that system to the government of Indian people. He sympathized with the freedom struggles of Greeks and Neapolitans. The French Revolution gladdened him. He rejoiced at the passage of the Reform Bill of 1832 by the English Parliament and the successful revolt of the Spanish colonies in South America. Yet, he welcomed British rule over India. Raja Ram Mohan Roy attributed India's decline into intermediate pre-British period to tyranny and oppression of the Rajput rulers and despotism of Muslim rulers. In contrast, the British rule appeared to him as providing Indians a God-sent opportunity for securing civil liberties. Raja Ram Mohan Roy believed that British rulers who enjoyed civil and political liberties in their country could also interest themselves in promoting liberty and social happiness as well as free inquiry into literary and religious subjects among those nations to which their influence extends. Ram Mohan Roy realized that India is as diverse as humanity itself, that is, a confluence of many languages, religious, customs and social practices, diverse subcultures and varieties of experiences on many levels. He perceived that India must have a modern secular state and a modern economy. Raja Ram Mohan Roy believed that in his time, Indians could derive the advantages of the liberal spirit of British public or political life if the laws for India were made by British Parliament rather than an Indian Legislative Council located on the Indian soil. If such a legislative council was set up, he feared that it would be controlled by the British Governor-General of India and his council. That would be in contravention to the principle of separation of powers, of which Raja Ram Mohan Roy was an ardent supporter. He maintained that if legislation for India was left to the British Parliament, it would benefit from the liberal public opinion in England. He was aware of the difficulties involved in making liberal legislation for a distant land. He therefore proposed 3 measures to ensure that the British Parliament makes good laws for the Indian people. Firstly, a free press. Second, commissions of inquiry. And third, ascertaining the views of gentlemen of intelligence and respectability. Only these classes seemed to him to be able to exert any influence on the government of those times. Both through his writings and through his activities, Ram Mohan Roy supported the movement for a free press in India. When press censorship was relaxed by Lord Hastings in 1819, Raja Ram Mohan Roy founded 3 journals: the Brahmanical Magazine in 1821, the Bengali weekly Samvad Kaumudi in 1821, and the Persian weekly Mirat-ul-Akbar in 1822. John Adams, who succeeded Lord Hastings as Governor-General, reimposed censorship in March 1823. Against this, a petition was made to the Supreme Court by Ram Mohan Roy, Dwarkanath Tagore, and several others. When the petition was rejected by the court, Ram Mohan Roy supported an appeal to the King in Council, which too was rejected. The British colonial state case against a free press in India was that India was a colonial administration and not a representative constitutional government, and that there was no effective public opinion in India. Raja Ram Mohan Roy argued that free press will help generate such a public opinion. He also maintained that precisely because India was a colony, it stood in greater need for a free press if a revolutionary was to overthrow the rulers was to be avoided. Nature and function of state. Raja Ram Mohan Roy has a definite understanding of nature and function of modern state. In Roy's opinion, the chief function of the state is to protect the life, religion, and property of individuals. For this reason, the sovereign in the state must have the power to enforce law and order. He argued that since 1712, until the emergence of the company as a political power, there was no effective political force in India. Akbar too was the last but one representative of the imperial throne of Timur, enjoyed only the empty title of King of Delhi without royal prerogative or power. Ranjit Singh's power was confined to the northwestern India only. The British were in those circumstances the only effective political force in the country, and what was more, that they had used the position to maintain orderly relations of exchange and protect the lives and religion and property of the individuals. It was also in British India that literary and political movements were continuously going on. But he emphatically asserted that the sovereignty must not be in the office of the Governor-General or his subordinate officers, but King in Parliament, who was the supreme legislative power in the country. Reforms in judicial administration. In order to introduce reforms in judicial administration, Roy recommended the codification of the criminal and civil law and publication of the 2 codes in Indian languages to familiarize the community with the law of the country. In Benthamite fashion, he argued that the code of criminal law ought to be simple in its principles, clear in its arrangement, and precise in its definitions, so that it may be established as a standard of criminal justice in itself. Roy's focus, however, was not only on any organizational blueprint for a restructured world order. His preoccupation rather was with synthesizing a transnational humanist culture. He appreciated liberal, scientific, world-affirming attitude of modern Western thought. He further appreciated spiritual, inner self-purification and communitarian values of Advaita Vedanta, disapproved of its world-denying and self-denying assumptions. But such a critique of cultures and religions he undermined by the cultural arrogance of Orthodox Brahmins, Christian missionaries, and Macaulay educationists. Furthermore, Ram Mohan Roy also can be seen as the only person in his time to realize the complete significance of modern age. Roy knew that the ideal of human civilization does not lie in isolation of independence, but in the brotherhood of interdependence of individuals as well as other nations. His attempt was to establish our peoples on the full consciousness of their own cultural personality, to make them comprehend the reality of all that was unique in their civilizations, in the spirit of sympathetic cooperation. He was thus the pioneer of modern education and also a social religious reformer par excellence. In conclusion, it will be important to remark that Raja Ram Mohan Roy was truly the first modern Indian man. He was a polymath and extremely educated, and he used his views in supporting women reform and modern education in India. His efforts for banning sati and promotion of widow remarriage are noteworthy. Furthermore, his philosophy for individual freedom is also still relevant. Moreover, while he has been criticized for supporting British rule, it is important to contextualize and place him within the circumstances in which he functioned before being able to put forth a critical argument against Ram Mohan Roy. Therefore, for the study of Indian political thought, Roy's thought is extremely relevant and needs to be studied and explored further for a clear understanding. Thank you.